Well, it's good to be testing negative and out of COVID quarantine, even though I don't think I ever had it. We did have it around the house. So I'm glad to be back with you today, talking about Luke chapter 4, verses 1 through 12, the temptation of Jesus, the temptations of Jesus. I'll give you a second if you want to go ahead and pause to read verses 1 through 12 of Luke 4. Luke 4 is actually one of my favorite chapters in the entire Bible. You'll see why over the next couple of days. So go ahead and get your Bible out and read. Okay, welcome back. A couple of notes just to remind you about this. First of all, Jesus had just been baptized. Remember that God had, that the Holy Spirit descended like a dove, that there were witnesses to it, that a voice came from the heavens, "You are my son, with you I am well pleased." And then we read the genealogy, which dated all the way back to Adam and gave us a genealogy of Jesus in the context of humanity. So from that, we're moving into what happens next, which is full of and led by the Spirit. He goes into the wilderness. Now, I combined a couple of verses there, but it's important that the Spirit led him and that he had been filled by the Spirit. So what I interpret from this is that it was definitely a divine experience, and maybe preparing him or coaching him, getting him mentally ready for what lies ahead in the way of his ministry, in the way of his life, and in the way of the impact that the Messiah was to have on humanity and certainly the people of Israel. What the passage says is that he fasted for 40 days. Now that harkens back to the Old Testament with 40-day fasts of Moses and Elijah, with Israel wandering 40 days and then looking forward 40 days between the resurrection and the ascension. What I want to share with you is that, did he fast for 40 days? Did he eat anything or nothing? I don't think it has to be one or the other. As you know, fasting can be, I'm going to fast for this period, and then I'm going to break the fast, and then I'm going to fast again. So the bottom line is he wasn't eating a whole lot. And it also may not have been 40 days. I understand that 40 is a word for a large number in the context of the Bible, but 40 shows up a lot. So it harkens back again to Moses, Elijah, Israel wandering, etc. The bottom line is he was probably hungry. He was probably tired. I bet he might have needed a bath. Just kind of exhaustion after being out in the open, maybe in a cave, and just really discerning what was coming. I'll also point out that this is a story, as communicated through Luke, between Jesus and, that had to have been told by Jesus. We don't get any indication that anyone else was there. He left the crowds and went out into the wilderness. So at some point, this story had to have been relayed out by Jesus, or somehow given into the oral tradition of what was happening. And I say that because of this word devil. Now, I don't want to get into the whole context of, is the devil real? Is it Satan? Is it big S? Is it little s? Let's just all agree that at a minimum, the Satan word is about the adversary, and whether that is an entity that battles against God, or whether that is ourselves. I think it's important to understand that there are temptations that are being pushed at Jesus while he's hungry, while he's tired, after he had been there for 40 days. So let's look at those temptations. If you are the Son of God, well, we just heard in the baptism that he is the Son of God. You are my son. So I think this if can really be interpreted to, since you are the Son of God, let me tell you what you need to do to prove that. Let me tempt you to prove that to everyone, as if it hadn't just been improved. So witnesses heard that. So now he's tempted to use that power of being the Son of God in ways that it was never intended. And so there are three temptations. Make stone from bread, worship other gods, whoever that tempter might be. In this word, the word that's used is devil, basically saying, acknowledge me, acknowledge that there's something else. And then the third is throw off the pinnacle of the temple and let the angels save you. Now, the pinnacle of the temple is actually the corner of the temple that overhangs what's known as the Kidron Valley. And if you go today, you can see where in the Holy Land, you can see where the pinnacle is, probably was, and the pitch from that is about 30 meters, according to Josephus, who translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek. So I know that's a long way. So whatever was tempting was tempting him to basically jump off, and you would be jumping to your death. So let the angels save you. What Jesus says is no 3 times, and here's how he denies that. First, he says that man doesn't live by bread alone, reminding that Israel survived on manna that was provided by God, that we are called to serve only God, and don't put God to the test, to trust in God. Now, in these 3 answers, he is quoting or referring to Deuteronomy in each case, which in Deuteronomy, Israel is described as God's son and is tested, and find through the Torah, learns how to depend on God for their livelihood, for all of their needs. The don't put God to the test comes from Exodus, when the people were complaining. There's a story about Moses that the people were complaining and they wanted water. So they went to Moses and said, give us water. And God said, okay, I'm going to give you water. And Moses used his staff to produce water from a rock. The people of Israel got what they wanted then, but this relationship was damaged because it wasn't just outright trust. It was lack of trust, that they felt that they needed to ask for something. Lots of stories there, lots of theological questions there, but that's basically where this we don't live by bread alone and we need to trust God comes from the Old Testament. So look at the responses and the progression of the responses. There's lots of scholarly research about this, but we start with this earth and rock, and we move to the hills and earthly kingdoms, and then move to basically all the heavens are yours. Those are the temptations that Jesus receives through these visions. Each one is more and more and more. And remember, he's saying that if you are the Son of God, since you are the Son of God, it should be easy to change this rock to bread. It should be easy to look up on the hills and see all of the kingdoms, the man-made kingdoms. It should even be easy to get on the pinnacle and be saved by angels. God will save you. So moving into like the higher realm is kind of a way of acknowledging that he's the Son of God. And this whole comparison, this whole tempting is a comparison to Israel's journey, stating that Jesus is on a similar journey, but the difference being, that Jesus doesn't ask for water from the rock, doesn't ask for other things that the people of Israel complained about and asked about and were provided. Jesus spends the time and learns, and then when he's tempted, he says no. So now we move to the big verse 13, I think it is, or 12. Then the devil departed until the opportune time. Now, I got to tell you, every time I read that, I think about Captain Jack Sparrow and the Pirates of the Caribbean, wait until the opportune time. What is that opportune time that they're talking about here? It could be anything. We don't really see the devil or reference that person or that entity again in Luke, but there are mentions of things like demons, and certainly there are temptations again. We're about to read tomorrow about the crowd turning on Jesus and wanting to throw him off of a ledge, that could be referenced back to this. So maybe there are additional temptations, certainly in the Garden of Gethsemane. There are temptations that that Jesus goes through. So the opportune moment is, I think, basically in moments of weakness, when there are doubts and wanting to take back control for ourselves. I think that's what opportune moment is. So that's very general, and it's very high level about these temptations. And what's the difference between temptation and test? Who's doing it? Who's leading it? Who's controlling it? I'm never so hard as I am on myself. And so I often think that if I'm being tempted by something, I'm doing that to myself sometimes. Do I really want to eat that donut? Well, that's not God putting the donut in front of me. That's me walking by a donut store, right? So there's a couple of questions that I'll leave you to reflect with. One of the best reflections we can make from these passages is to consider how our relationship with God can be put under strain by ourselves, by others, by systemic events or processes. Doubt exists. And how do we get through that doubt? We look to these passages, verses 1 through 13, that give us an understanding of just how difficult it was for Jesus to say no, but there was basis for it, and there was basis for believing in the promise. And so consider that as you're asking that question. How is our relationship? How can it be put under strain, and what causes it to be strained? And then the second question that I came up with here for reflection is, so how do Jesus's answers, which pull from the Hebrew Bible and remind us how God fulfilled those promises time and again, how do those answers help us today? The answers that he gives follow a theme of trust and loyalty. So I asked the question, whom do we trust today and why? That's the reflection for you to take away today. Is God on the list? Do we trust God? Do we believe in God? Do we believe God? And reflective of a community, who do we trust in love today? How do we build up our community in love in a trusting way? There's so much going on right now that's so divisive. How do we build that trust when we're tempted just to cut off any kind of communication? That's a reflection for you today. And I'm thankful that you joined me today. See you tomorrow.